फ्रेम से बाहर है ना. Welcome to the Prince Government Matters. What we are going to talk about today is how and whether India can resolve the China-India face-off, the dispute with China through diplomatic channels and through international intervention. Now, this comes in the wake of Defense Minister Rajnath Singh's visit to Russia, which he's in fact beginning today. It's a 3-day visit, and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar's meeting with his Chinese counterpart in the coming days. To talk to us, I have with me Noinima Basu, who tracks diplomacy for The Print, and she's going to help us understand what the international community is saying. We know the US has also said something. US President Donald Trump has made a statement as well. Noinima, welcome to the Prince Government Matters. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you so much, Ruhi. Please.
So, just to begin with, Noinima, let's just put in perspective what the international community has said about this very violent face-off, very, very difficult face-off at the LAC between India and China.
So, Ruhi, the thing is, let's first understand that, this is going on for over a month now, and things have, deteriorated after the violent face-off that we saw happening on June 15th night. So since then, there have been efforts on both sides to mitigate it. However, it seems that on matters such as, on the location of the Galwan Valley, in terms of whose part of the LOC it is in, and India and China both have been exchanging words on that. And the fact that they have been saying constantly that while China is saying it is on our part of the LOC, India is saying it is on their part. So yes, but then both have agreed that we need to have a dialogue and we need to have it soon. And dialogue mechanisms are there. There are several dialogue mechanisms, especially on the boundary issue between India and China. So they will be meeting soon. And as you rightly said, there will be a Russia-India-China trilateral meeting happening on the 23rd, followed by defense minister's visit also that sort of began today. So hopefully it seems that, and Russia has been briefed, it's one of the few countries which was briefed, remember, on this standoff. And we've seen statements coming from President Trump on and off. He's been talking about mediation. He's been talking of the fact that these two countries need to settle things. So yes, that's what the situation presently is.
So, but what can we expect in this Russia visit, Noinema? Can we expect the defense minister to talk to his counterpart there, and for the Russian dispensation to talk about mediation? Because we do know that Russia and India have had robust ties, and Russia strategically is well placed to also talk to China on this issue.
Yes, that's right. I mean, let's remember that Russia, India, China, they have several dialogues together. RIC is a different platform also. But yes, I mean, when defense minister is there in Russia, and we've seen Russia taking a lot of steps in terms of speaking to the world and otherwise also that these two countries need to settle it. Now, remember that when the RIC meeting was being discussed, at that time, there were reports coming out, and even the print had reported that the dialogue might get delayed because of the India-China standoff. But then we saw how Russia sort of stepped in and resolved that. So yes, when the defense minister is there now in Russia, this is definitely going to come up. And I'm sure Russia will again urge for a dialogue, because every country now wants the focus to be on the pandemic and how to address the challenges emerging from that.
And what do we make of President Trump's statement on the tensions between India and China? I mean, can you tell us what he said and what is the implication of that?
So President Trump had been constantly talking about the fact that, yes, these two countries are having tensions. He recently said that they're now, having throwing blows at each other. And he's been talking of the fact that I'm ready to talk to both India as well as China so that they settle the matter. So he's been talking about the fact that, I mean, he's not taken sides yet, although all countries have expressed condolences for the 20 soldiers that we lost in that violent face-off. However, US has also kept firm on the fact that it is not taking sides. It is only saying that we can talk to India and we can also talk to China and see where we can get the middle ground and solve this issue.
Right. All right, Nanima, let me start taking a few questions. I already have a slew of viewer questions. And for the rest of our viewers, this is a live telecast of the show. So do send in your questions. Arjun Parmeswaran, considering casualties at the border, the muted international response, the strong anti-China domestic sentiment, Congress criticism, and the potential long-term dent to the PM's strongman image, would such an option ever be on the cards? I'm assuming such an option means international mediation or intervention by global powers.
So that's a good question in the sense that both countries have had these kind of issues earlier also. We know from history that these kind of standoffs sometimes going into a violent phase of, it has happened earlier, but never had India or China ever spoken of the fact that they want a third party, so to say, a third country to come and mediate between the two, because they have several dialogue mechanisms within which they always resolve the matter, so to say, in the sense that, to mitigate the standoffs like that.
Right.
So yes, I mean, but then at this point of time, let's remember, this is an unprecedented situation where the world is facing a pandemic. Now, that can be a reason what these countries are citing, that, even if you don't want a third party intervention, we can at least mitigate this current tension so that the focus again shifts to addressing challenges from the pandemic. And let's remember, China, which was sort of being praised all this last 1 or 2 months for being coming out of the pandemic as such, has again gone back. We've seen how in the
Right.
capital Beijing, cases have been rising. So yes, they are also facing all those challenges domestically.
Right. Manas Roy wants to know, will it be prudent for India to actively play the Taiwan or Tibet card to control China?
Well, India has never really done that, in the sense it has never really played the card, so to say, to resolve the boundary issues with China. But we've seen, again from history, what these two countries have done. Be it Tibet, and I mean, Tibet is again the second homeland, so to say, for the His Holiness Dalai Lama, and the government in exile is based out of Dharamshala. So we know that remains a point of contention. But then also, when it comes to Taiwan, India follows a one China policy.
Right.
Similarly, as China follows a one India policy when it comes to Kashmir. So these two cards, in the sense, have never been played before. But yes, right now, a lot of talks are going on that, that China never really sort of respected the one India policy, because we've seen what China has done when the Kashmir issue had happened with the abrogation of Article 370, and they spoke openly at the UNGA
Right.
last year in September.
Right.
So that has been, both these countries are sort of playing, I would not say playing the card, but yes, that definitely remains on the table, and that remains a potential weapon that these two countries can use.
So essentially, using sticky issues to corner each other is what we are talking about. There's a question from Bitan Chakrabarti. Are global powers even bothered? Everyone is fighting the virus. US is in election mode. Others do not have the wherewithal. Isn't it better that India chart its own path, even if it is longer and is more arduous? So, Nanima, there is a point there really, everybody has their own, at this point, domestic compulsions. Everybody is bogged down by the coronavirus, which is taking up all the governments across the globe, all of their attention, all of their time, all of their mental space. US, of course, as the viewer rightly points out, is also in election mode. So how much bandwidth do these global powers even have to worry so much about this India-China face-off?
Yes, Ruhi. So that's what I was exactly saying, that right now, all that these countries really want is that India and China should settle this matter, even if, of course, temporary, this border standoff, and then go back to focusing on the pandemic. Because remember, not a single country now is sort of can completely say that, yes, we are not worried about the pandemic anymore. So that remains the topmost priority for all countries, be it Australia, be it America. And also, we've seen how all these countries have also stated that the reason for this pandemic is China, and which is why an international review and international investigation is also going on. So basically, what these countries are telling India especially is that settle this matter with China diplomatically. If you want to talk and have more parties within that talk, we can do it informally. But let's just go back to the table where we can discuss where the pandemic started, how it started, and how to resolve it.
Right. Tarush Kakkar, is it time to reconsider our alliance with Russia as Russia is also coming in Chinese can, and should India strengthen the Quad?
Well, India has strengthened the Quad to a very large extent. Even we've seen that during the pandemic, India and China, India and the US, I'm sorry, were discussing the Quad. Even Quad Plus meeting had happened, all with the aim, with the sort of objective and unsaid objective that how all these countries will be facing China now, and how to make China accountable really for the pandemic that has started taking place. We've heard what President Trump had recently talked about, a Kung flu, and then China virus, Wuhan virus, that has always happened. So India is looking at Quad, Indo-Pacific. All those meetings have happened, remember, during this lockdown and pandemic period itself. So yes, India is doing all that, but considering our relationship with Russia now, remember that remains that's also a strategic partner. Now, as I said, that even when the standoff had happened, and we were not even 1 month into it, we did brief Russia about what was going on and how the tensions were rising. So considering all of that, yes, these are the, India really cannot look away from Russia. Russia is a strategic partner. They are our largest supplier of arms and armament. So yes, Russia remains very important for India, as well as the fact that US and Australia and others who are part of Quad and Indo-Pacific, they are also important for India at this point of time.
Right. Mandira has a question. With growing resentment against international organizations, would it be right for them to interfere in the India-China border issue? I mean, it essentially also means a loss of faith in a lot of international organizations. I think she's taking off, particularly from the World Health Organization, which has lost a lot of face in this entire COVID pandemic.
Yes, that's true. And also the fact that, remember, India, Australia, they just had a bilateral summit level meeting, although virtually. The kind of understanding that all these countries are having at this point of time, even the European Union and others, is that yes, WHO is to be blamed for not informing the world in a timely manner, but they are also quite, this thing of the fact that WHO remains relevant, and there is no other sort of international multilateral health body, which can sort of replace WHO. And we've seen what Prime Minister Modi had also stated at the meeting of the G20, that WHO needs reform. And by reform, they mean that it needs to, the Chinese influence on WHO has to sort of, lessen a bit. And there needs to be more accountability, more transparency in information. Also,
right.
Since when we are talking about international institutions, there's also the United Nations that China is also sort of using against India. But now India is now going to be a non-permanent member of the non-permanent member at the UNSC. So we'll be seeing exciting times coming up.
But let's not forget, China is a permanent member of the UNSC. So that
yes,
does.
That's right.
Uma Shankar, considering a lot of global powers still depend on China for supply chains, would they prefer taking the side of India? China is still a more powerful nation than India, both economically and technologically. And of course, as part of, as the viewer points out, the global supply chain, China is far more crucial.
Yes, that's right. So, which is why if you see none of the countries, they have yet taken sides, I would say. Although the fact that, it has emerged how many soldiers have lost their lives. In India, we know it is 20 soldiers, and there are others who are critically injured. Even in China, the number is huge. Keeping that also in mind, the countries have not taken sides only because of the fact that every country is now facing an economic challenge. So at this point of time, they would not really like to disrupt the value chains that already is there. But then they are also sort of looking at a China plus one strategy, is what some of the, American chambers are looking at, and is what American firms are looking at, and also the European countries. So it will be feasible to say that yes, countries have been dependent on China, including India, for global value chains and other things. But in a post-COVID world, that is certainly going to be changed.
Right. There's a question from a viewer. I can't seem to place the handle here, but what it says is, can India expect better support from the USA in a Biden presidency? So, is a change of regime in the US likely to benefit India? Is it likely to be less beneficial to India? That's, I think that's the gist of the question, the crux of the question.
Well, if the question is only focused on the US, then we've seen all this while for the last, I would say, 10, 20 years, India has been enjoying a bipartisan relationship when it comes to the US, right? Be it the Democrats or the Republican Party. Now, even if it's, you would never know whether President Trump is going to come back or not, and we are not going to judge that. But even if it's a Biden presidency, the pressure on China will definitely remain, because in the US-China trade war, we have seen that that is one trade war where, even if the Democrats have stated that President Trump is going little over the board, they do support the fact that China needs to be restrained, and the fact that even under a Biden presidency, coming back to the question, India will not face any kind of challenges. I mean, the relationship is that of a strategic relationship.
Right.
We are their major defense partners. I mean, India is US's major defense partner, so all that will remain.
Right. There's a question from Shivanshu Gupta. Does PM Modi's statement have any implications on the diplomatic community, in the sense that does it undermine India's position? Well, that's a question, that's a raging debate, Noinima, over the last 2 days, ever since Friday evening, when Prime Minister Modi made that very confounding statement. And then there was a clarification that came the next day from the PMO. But what is the diplomatic community outside of India? What is the international community saying about that statement?
So, see, India's position from, if you would notice from last week itself, is clearly the fact that there has been a construction of certain structures that were taking place across the LOC. That's the statement that even PMO had given,
right.
and the ILAC, in also the Ministry of External Affairs, that across the LAC, the line of actual control structures were being built. And while sort of demolishing those structures, the violent face-off happened. So there were confusion on the fact that what the Prime Minister stated, that there had been no intrusions. But if you see the way he had stated it in Hindi, is the fact that at present, which is presently when he was meeting, the all-party meeting was going on,
right,
at that time there was no intrusion happening, is probably the reading that I have had. Because after that, clarification came in, stating the fact that yes, Chinese wanted to build a structure across the LAC, and when India restricted that, stopped them from doing it, that's when the face-off took place.
right.
So that's what the diplomats are stating around the world, that this is what the situation is as of now. And the fact that there have been talks going on across the military levels and the diplomatic levels to mitigate the situation,
right,
and for disengagement.
Right. Noinima, I know you're in a hurry because you have a lot of stories to file, and a slew of meetings that you have. But let me ask one last question before we close. This is from Ankit Nakshane. Should India join the defense pact with the USA and European nations to contain the China on the border?
So I would not know which defense pact he's talking about, but India has signed 2 defense pacts with foundational agreements with the US. Only one is left out of the 3. With Australia also, we recently signed another defense pact. All these are being done to strengthen the defense and security relationship between, the countries, between India, US, Australia. They have their joint exercises happening, maritime and otherwise also. So yes, these are all strategic partners, and India is strengthening its defense and security ties with all countries, with all the key countries, I would say, around the world.
Right. Well, thank you, Noinima, for running us through what is happening internationally, the kind of international reactions we are seeing towards the India-China face-off at the LAC, and what really can we or should we expect from the international community going forward. Thank you so much for watching Government Matters, for sending in your questions. We'll be back with another episode tomorrow. Until then, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a lot to offer.